Studios, the Ausbiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Welcome to the COB. I'm Juliet Sully, reunited with Nadine.
With me, yeah, it has been a while, long time between drinks. However, like riding a bike, I think. And today, if we just look at the market to get us started, you can't look past the financials, really proving to be a dead weight, really, on this market.
Yeah, Martin Lakos said to me, don't blame me, because we've been talking about this downgrade that Macquarie came through on the big four. But certainly it kind of seems that once that came through and hit the wire this morning, the big four did sort of sell off. And this comes after we've had the likes of Jarden, another broker, which escapes me, UBS, saying, look, you know, even though a lot of people are saying the banks look frothy, they're actually good value. So today they got sold off anyway.
We'll see, because, you know, there's a lot being priced in to the banks. But let's look at the market. So 7,709 for the S&P ASX 200 as the last of the day's trades do go through. And we'll keep an eye on that one. Looks as if week to date we're down close to 2%. So not crash hot.
So the ASX is off by about 20 points. Also worth noting that, you know, we have been talking about the banks being sold off, but the miners did really well today. Copper, 7-month high, gold rallied. And so given they're such two important sectors of our market, I did think it was quite interesting, the battle there. So financials down 2.2%, materials up almost 2%.
We'll get to some of the corporate stories as well, but look, before we really get down to business, you've heard us banging on about this survey for long enough,
and
right?
We thought we would update you on the winners.
Yeah, so here's the fun part, and get this, nearly 2,000 people responded to our survey. That is a huge number of people, Juliet, when you consider it took about 15 minutes on average for people to do the survey. So a massive thank you to all of you that did participate. And we do have winners. Where's the drum roll?
Winner, chicken dinner. The $1,000 managed portfolio from MPC Markets. Congratulations to Jeff Andrews.
Yeah, well, there were other prizes on offer as well. Bruce and Lisa each receiving a case of premium wine from Australian Vintage, and not to forget
Gordon S. If you see him on the streets with an ausbiz hat, that is him. He's been kitted out with ausbiz merch, and we'll be emailing everyone who took part some of the highlights of the survey. And again, just a huge thanks to those 2,000 people that filled it in.
I know it takes a lot, but what I've actually written a view in the COB newsletter today, just highlighting a couple of things that really stood out to me. One of which is that more than 95% of you said that you trust what we do here is credible, informative, very transparent, and I think that speaks to, you know, the quality of the guests that we get, none of whom, by the way, are ever paid to come on. You know, stands in contrast to a lot of what goes on out there. And a lot of you said that you'd recommend us to a friend. So
thank you, and please do. Tell your friends. Tell everyone you meet, because we want to continue doing what we do here and doing it well for everyone. Let's get to those themes of the day. We talked there about the banks being battered, the sector down by 2.2%, so a big drag.
Yeah, and telco tussles. So this is not just Optus and Singtel. Looks like Singtel is trying to offload Optus to Brookfield Asset Management, that Canadian PE firm. But also a smaller little tussle happening here. Aussie Broadband, its white labeling contract with Origin was dumped because Superloop won that contract with Origin. And if you recall, a little bit complicated because, of course, ABB had bid for Superloop. It's a shareholder of Superloop. So yeah, really interesting there. And we spoke with Paul Tyler, who is the CEO of Superloop. We'll get that up online shortly if you'd like to listen to what he has to say, because they did upgrade and the share price went wild. But he said it's not just because of what they won with Origin, it's also because they're really doubling down on their strategy, and, you know, organic momentum is growing in the business as well.
Yeah, and Will Riggle from Climb Investment had some great insights on the back of that interview of yours as well. Myer's mission as well. Remember Olivia Wirth from Qantas? She, as some people are saying, being parachuted in as chairwoman. Ari Mervis, who's only been there 4 months, on the way out. I was talking to Rachel Waterhouse from the Australian Shareholders Association. She did say some of her members have been saying, you know, do you become the big boss of a retailer without any retail background? The AFR's done an interesting piece saying, look, she started her career as a a retail
on the
person
floor.
while she was at uni, but
As
she's
many of us
also
did.
got the brand and loyalty background. So
I think it's a bit weak to say that she wouldn't have the, whether or not running a board, you've got that experience up your sleeve, got to start somewhere. But, when it comes to customers, I think she's probably built up that cred. And look, as for Myer, share price was up by close to 6% today. For a very old school retailer, it's doing pretty well, and it's making the transition to online. So there was lots to sort of like about Myer. And we'll get there a little bit later on because it was, in fact, the stock of the day today.
it was, but let's have a look at some of the sectors. We mentioned the banks. Let's see where they have finished up. They were all down by about 2 to 4% from memory. There we go. Westpac off by 3.7%. ANZ down 3.5%.
And don't forget, a lot of these banks do report out of season, and so we'll be hearing more from all of those ex-Commonwealth Bank come May. Here's a look at where that battlefield lay with some of these big miners. Really good gains being seen here for the likes of BHP, for Rio. Fortescue a little less so, but South 32. While we're there, we need to mention Arafura. So that is the Gina Reinhart-backed company. Its shares were up, I think, close to 60%, somewhere around there. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me right now, because the federal government is going to be pumping in funds to help level the playing field when it comes to the rare earths. So your tax dollars at work.
Yeah, indeed. All right, let's have a look at the telcos. You mentioned Singtel potentially offloading Optus. I think the amount of people that have told me today, Optus is not listed, I know that, but Telstra always moves on the back of that, and it was up by slightly, 1/10%. TPG, Aussie Broadband on the Superloop story that you talked about, that's just an incredible diversion there. And Spark New Zealand down by about 0.2%.
All right, let's leave the sectors there, shall we, Juliette? We've got plenty of analysis online when it comes to some of these companies, and Appen, it's worth a mention only because it had yet another suitor walk away. Really troubled company, down 18% today. Aussie Broadband, there we go, terminating, dealing with, I guess, the termination of its contract with Origin. It did, though, stick by its guidance.
Yeah, and I think we've covered a lot of these stocks, but Appen as well, just kind of interesting that it was sort of forced to explain why it had that huge movement earlier in the week. And as Harry Watt from Shaw and Partners put it to me earlier today as well, it's not just Tuesday, the big moves, it's been sort of volatile for some time. So as it did announce, it had that $154 million offer from the NASDAQ listed Innodata.
Okay. We're still going to make you wait to find out what our guest said about Myer today on the footy special of the call, because we would like to no longer keep Patrick Idquivel waiting. He's joining us from eBay with a bit of a sense of what is happening out there right now. I suppose with you, Patrick, it would be wise to look ahead because we have some big data coming through in the US tonight. What are we expecting?
Yeah, we've got PPI, I think a bit of unemployment data. It's going to be a busy night out of the US, and we had CPI out of the US earlier in the week, but we're not getting too much movement with the USD. CPI came up a little bit stronger. You'd think the US dollar would rally there, but what we're actually seeing is the DXY coming off a bit and seeing the Aussie actually consolidate above 66 cents to finish the week. I think we're about 2 cents up in the last 2 weeks. So no, I don't think even if we do see good data tonight, that we'll see a rebound in the US dollar.
So where does the Aussie go? Does it move even higher from around this 66 point level, Patrick?
Yeah, my view at the moment is, if you remember where we were to open up the year, we were trading around 68 cents. I think that was a little teaser to what we could see this year. I think a lot of market participants forget what is coming up, what central banks are pricing. There's a little election happening over there towards the end of the year. I think it's only fair to say, I guess, from our point of view, that we could see the Aussie stronger and can consolidate closer to 70 cents as we trade through 2024.
All right. So when you put that into context and when you start thinking about things like commodity prices coming off, and we have the federal treasurer, Jim Chalmers, admitting that this is going to make the budget a little bit more difficult. I mean, when you look beyond just the data coming out of the US and the Aussie dollar's reaction to the USD, where do you look?
I look at China more than anything. I feel like they are over-optimistic over there. If you remember last year, I was going down the theme that we'll see a rebound post-COVID over there as they started to reopen to start off 2023. I think the NPC over there mentioned a growth target of 5% for 2024. That's about 0.5% above what markets were expecting. I feel like if we get continued support over there, we should see, that support Aussie exports, hopefully support Aussie commodities as well, and the demand for the Australian dollar, right? So I see the correlation between China and Australia very high, and it really impacts the value of the Aussie. So, look, that's what I look to, and I feel like we might see some positivity out of China this year.
Let's just have a quick look as well at what you're seeing with sterling, Patrick, because of course we're starting to look at whether or not there is going to be any move from the BOE. What are your traders telling you, or what are you seeing in terms of action with the pound?
Yeah, I think we saw earnings come off a bit in the UK. Overnight, GDP figures were as expected. But I feel like the pound just has had such a good run over the last few months. The BOE were obviously one of the more hawkish banks. Right now, we see pound coming off a fair bit. We kind of see, depending on which central bank moves first, whether that's going to be the BOE or the Fed, that's really going to dictate where those major currency flows will go. But right now, we see pound Aussie around 1.93. Be surprised if that comes back down below 1.9.
Oh, I think we might be losing Patrick, but we thank you for your time, Patrick. Anyway, Patrick Edwickle from eBury there. And of course, now we can find out.
The stock of the day was Myer. Now, you know that we had this, this special to kick off footy season. And we did pick Myer as stock of the day, which we often do because it's related to news of the day. But this one actually does tie in with the footy theme because Olivia Worth, of course, the new chair announced today, came from Qantas. And Richard Goyder, who is AFL Commission Chair, is chair of Woodside and the outgoing chair of Qantas. How do you like that?
A long bow, but I like it. I like it.
Yeah, well, Philip Pepe from Shaw Partners and Mark Gardner from MPC Markets gave us what they think about Myer. Let's take a listen.
Those companies that's very good at mining their database, understanding who their customer is and try and target their promotions to that particular customer. It took them a couple of goes to get it right, but they seem to have it right now. Plus you've got some additions to the board, and plus you've got Solly flexing his muscles to make sure it's, we're a long way gone from when this stock was back in the 30s.
Yeah.
It's had a very good run. It's 20% above analyst price targets of around 70 cents, which I expect will be upgraded after today. I wouldn't chase it. It pays a good divi yield, 6%. I would call it a hold, but this is one where analysts clearly chasing their tail, and yeah, I'll call it a hold.
Look, I'd say the same as a hold at this stage.
Right.
I don't think I'll be buying it here. I mean, we're no longer even holding our favourites in the retail space like Wesfarmers, so this is probably pretty far down on the list for us. But look, hold it if you've got it for sure. It's got a pretty reasonable yield, an 11 PE, and I think you're right. I think there'll be analyst upgrades as well. That sort of play a little bit of catch up. So yeah.
All right, let's have a look at the market leaders on the day when we did close a little lower, but a lot of those mining players looking really good. I mentioned gold rising, Evolution up by some 6%. Interesting that Block had a good day, especially given that you actually saw the interest rate sensitive mega caps such as Nvidia and Meta fall on Wall Street overnight. South 32 rising. We did see a little bit of a pickup in iron ore futures, and that of course comes on what has been a very volatile week for that commodity.
Yeah, that's an interesting one looking at Block. All right, you've left me with the laggards. Sure. Here we go. Polynovo. I actually spoke with the chair, David Williams, just yesterday. Hope that has nothing to do with it. Down by 7.6%. Look, the company's going for growth still, and remaining profitable as well. Eagers Automotive, 6.6% lower. Core Lithium off by 5%. Ingham's and Neuron Pharmaceuticals. Neuron's had a tough run.
Yeah.
Its US partner selling its product has really been battered and bruised as of late.
Just worth noting, Eagers and Ingham's both ex-div, so that could explain that. Let's have a look at the small cap leaders. Well, there you go.
Oh my gosh, 79% on that number.
Wow.
So that's what a little bit of government support can do for a share price. Aris Resources, so yeah, it's all about critical mineral. It's all about securing that supply. It's been a beleaguered sector, but China, the only other real player in that. So I guess, the government deciding it's worth putting tax dollars into that. Gina Reinhart probably doesn't mind either.
Yeah, exactly. Let's look at the losers in the small cap app, and we've talked about their Invictus Energy, Lake Resources, Northern Minerals and Dimerex, all losers today as well.
Okay, so what's coming up? What's happening tonight? Well, we mentioned it there with Patrick Idquivel. We get the February PPI likely to remain subdued as upstream price pressures remain contained. We also get retail sales. So expecting to see a rebound there, Juliet, but growth, you've got to say it will still be tepid, you know, as consumers, you've got to think, would still be quite conscious of the interest rate environment and the rising cost of things as well.
Yeah, and interesting on the back of Dollar Tree as well, announcing it's shutting 1,000 stores. So how much is the consumer sort of cracking, I guess? Let's have a look at what we can expect here locally or in the region. New Zealand manufacturing PMI coming through, Liontown coming through.
That'll be interesting.
With earnings. Is that Sayona?
Yeah, I always say Sayona. I'm not quite
Yeah.
sure what it is, but it's pumping some money into its resources. In Tamboran Resources, we have actually, we spoke with Joel Little, the CEO, last week. If you'd like to go back, that's online. You can always go online to catch up with a lot of the interviews that we do that you don't get a chance to watch either live or, on the day, because they do remain up there. You can just scroll down on the website, ausbiz.com.au, and there's a whole section that's just dedicated to CEO interviews, and they're always worth a good listen.
Called the Corner Office. All right, let's have a look at where the market is. I think down about third of 1%. The ASX 200 finishing out the session down 15 points, 0.2%, 7,713. Worth noting, as Martin Lakos told me earlier, we were at 6,800 towards the end of last year. We've run up to 7,800, so a little pullback, really.
Well, a lot of people call it a healthy pullback,
Yeah.
right? It's a pause for breath. It's a little bit of consolidation. And of course, we still have tomorrow. We'll see what tomorrow brings. And I suppose that's how we segue into a goodbye.
Goodbye. We'll see you tomorrow from 9:40 a.m. Eastern.